4-year-old child who couldn't yet write, who had never read the Bible. Could he truly have seen heaven? And if the answer is yes, does that mean we, as adults, may have forgotten something deeply sacred? In this video, you'll hear the true story of Colton Burpo, a little boy who claimed he met Jesus, saw angels, and even encountered the sister he never knew he had because she was never born. We'll walk through the moment he left his body during surgery, the words he shared that left his pastor father trembling, unable to deny what he heard, and a deeply moving detail in the middle of this video when Colton described things no one had ever told him. If you've ever wondered about life after death, or felt that someone who passed away might still be beside you, then this video might be the message your soul has been waiting to hear. Welcome to Heaven's Thread, where I share true stories that touch the mystery behind death and the sacredness before we're even born. If this story touches your heart, leave the letter Q in the comments so I know you've connected with the soul of this little boy. And if you'd like me to tell even deeper, more emotional stories, leave the letter E so I know how to grow with you. And now, sit quietly for a moment. Take a gentle breath, because the journey begins here. This little boy saw heaven. Colton Burpo, only 4 years old. A little boy with blonde hair, wide round eyes, who loved superheroes and playing with plastic trucks in the churchyard. He was just like any other child. Until one day, everything changed. Colton started complaining about stomach pain. Nothing severe, just a dull, lingering ache. His parents thought it was probably a mild flu or just a common stomach bug. But the pain didn't go away. Then Colton started vomiting. Then came the fever, and slowly he began to lose consciousness. They rushed him to the hospital. The first doctor said it was the flu, prescribed some medicine, and sent him home. But just a few days later, Colton's body nearly collapsed. He wouldn't open his eyes. His lips turned pale. And that's when his parents knew this was something far more serious. At a larger hospital, the diagnosis came: Colton's appendix had burst. Toxins had spread throughout his abdominal cavity. That tiny body was fighting for every second. He needed surgery immediately. Without it, there would be no chance. Colton's father, Todd, was a pastor, but in that moment, even he couldn't hold on to his faith. He dropped to his knees in the hospital chapel and whispered, "Please don't take him from me." Colton was taken into surgery. More than an hour later, the doctor came out. He didn't smile, but said something they would never forget. He's alive. But now we wait to see if his body can pull through. That little boy survived. Colton opened his eyes after a few days, still weak, but alert, very alert. And then Colton said something that made his father freeze. "You were praying in the small room, with the soda machine right outside." Todd went silent. That room was the hospital chapel, and at the exact moment Colton was being operated on, Todd had been there, alone. No one told Colton that. No one had said a word. Colton continued, "I saw Mommy on the phone. She was crying. Every detail, every emotion, described with chilling precision. And then he said he saw the light, a powerful, radiant light. But it didn't hurt his eyes. It felt peaceful, gentle. What would you think if a child, who had never even heard the word soul, could describe the moment of leaving his body like that? And this was only the beginning, because what Colton shared next will make it impossible for you to look away. Colton didn't speak of death as something scary. There were no tears, no panic. He simply told the story, like describing a strange and wonderful trip, a place where he didn't walk, but floated, like the wind, like light. I floated out of my body. Colton's voice was soft, innocent, but certain. He said he could see everything clearly. He saw the doctors operating. He saw his own body lying still on the table. He described a tall man standing nearby, very kind. He didn't say a word, just stood there, as if watching over him. There was a bright light behind the doctors. I wasn't scared. I felt very safe. Imagine, what would you think if your child said that? Would you believe them, or try to find a more logical explanation? Todd, Colton's father, couldn't speak. He just sat there, listening, slowly feeling everything become familiar and yet strangely distant. Colton said that after floating above the operating table, he began to be taken to another place, not the hospital. No more doctors, just light and colors. Colors, he said, don't exist on Earth. I was taken to a place with a huge gate. The gate was made of gold. There were lots of colors around it, and someone was waiting for me on the other side. Todd asked, "Who did you see?" Colton looked at his father for a moment, then said, very calmly, "Great-grandpa, I met Pop." He hugged me and said, "We're so proud of you." "Hey, and I also met a little girl." Todd's heart stopped. "You met who?" Colton answered, "A little girl. She ran to me and wouldn't let go. She said she's my sister." Todd couldn't speak, because 2 years before Colton was born, his wife had a miscarriage. It was something they had never spoken of with Colton. Never. And a 4-year-old child couldn't have made that up. "Do you remember the first time you saw your child's eyes at birth?" Todd remembered the look in Colton's eyes as he told this story. Unblinking, honest, just the eyes of a child who had returned from a place no one believes is real. And this was only the beginning of what Colton shared, because heaven through the eyes of a child isn't a painting. It's a place you can feel with your soul. Colton said that heaven wasn't like anything he had ever seen. Not like church. Not like the pictures hanging in Sunday school classrooms. Everything there was bright, but not blinding, and the colors had no names. He described a large, glowing golden gate, lush green grass outside, and a vibrant garden like a rainbow come to life. But the moment that left his parents completely speechless was when Colton said that everyone there had wings, not like in cartoons, not like Hollywood angels, but beings of light, floating, and they sung. Colton said there was so much music, but no microphones, no speakers, just everyone singing together, and the music was everywhere. A 4-year-old child doesn't know about choirs, doesn't understand harmony or resonance, yet Colton described it all like someone who had just experienced it. He didn't just see that place, he felt it. And then, when his father asked, "Did you meet anyone there?" Colton nodded. "I met Jesus." Todd held his breath. This was the part most people would doubt. A child saying they met Jesus sounds like something out of imagination. But Colton continued. Jesus had marks on both his hands, and on his feet, too. I knew it was him because he hugged me. And he said, "Everything's going to be okay, Colton." Marks on his hands, on his feet, and on his side. Those 3 places. No 4-year-old would know about them unless they had been taught about the crucifixion. Colton had never been taught that. Never watched any films about Jesus. Never read the Bible. So how did he know? And then came the moment that left Colton's parents standing in stunned silence. He said, "Jesus sits on the right side of God the Father, and on the left is someone very sad, because he has to say no to many people." Todd asked, "Do you know who that is?" Colton answered, "I think it's Gabriel." A 4-year-old boy knowing about the Archangel Gabriel and understanding that he delivers messages from heaven. That couldn't be mere childish imagination. Colton said heaven was beautiful, but what made him not want to leave was the feeling of no more pain, no more worry, just peace. "I didn't want to come back." That's what Colton said. But someone told him, "Your dad is praying, and you have to go back." Todd Burpo was a pastor, a man who preached every Sunday, prayed every night, and taught others to believe in heaven. But never did he imagine that the true test of his faith would come from his own son. Colton was only 4 years old. He knew nothing about theology, prophecy, or religious symbols. He simply described what he saw, with clear eyes, no hesitation, no fear of being wrong. Jesus has a horse, a real horse. It's rainbow-colored. He wears white, with a purple sash around his waist. His hair is dark brown, very long. His eyes are so kind. Todd sat motionless. He didn't understand, not because what Colton said contradicted his faith, but because it aligned perfectly with what the Bible says, with things Colton had never been taught. Colton couldn't read yet. He didn't watch much TV. The Burpo family didn't tell dramatic stories to children. Yet Colton knew there was a war in heaven. He knew that God had an enemy. He knew that angels carried swords, and that they were very tall, taller than buildings. Todd began to doubt himself. Was he imagining all of this? Had Colton overheard something somewhere and just repeated it? So he began testing him, asking questions in reverse, changing details on purpose. But every time, Colton shook his head. He never changed his story, never hesitated, never embellished. He just told the same story as if it had been etched deep into his soul. One day, Todd pulled out various images of Jesus, pictures from books, the internet, even classical paintings. "Is this the one you saw?" Colton shook his head. "That's not him." He tried another image. Again, Colton shook his head, until one day, Todd came across a painting by Akiane Kramaric, a child prodigy who also claimed to have seen Jesus in a vision at age 8. Todd showed the painting to Colton. The boy looked at it and smiled. "Yes, that's him." Todd nearly collapsed. 2 children, thousands of miles apart. They had never met. They weren't lying, each with their own experience, yet both describing the same face almost identically. From that moment on, Todd no longer doubted. No more tests, no more questions, only silence and a quiet whisper in his heart. Heaven is real, and my son has been there. After Colton began to recover, most people assumed he would forget what he had shared, that it was just a hallucination from the anesthesia, a memory that would fade with time. But then, The boy started talking about people who had passed away. Not just great-grandpa Pop, someone he'd never met, but also people no one had ever mentioned in the family. Colton said, "Great-grandpa was very tall. He had white hair, and he smiled a lot. He said I looked like my dad when he was little." Todd froze, because the way Colton described him matched perfectly with an old photo of Pop as a young man, a picture hidden away in a drawer. Colton had never seen that photo, not once. Then one day, as his mother Sonia was folding laundry, Colton walked up and softly said, "Mom, I met my sister." Sonia stopped. "What sister?" "The one without a name, because you didn't give her one." She said, "She misses you, but she's not sad anymore." The room fell completely silent. 2 years before Colton was born, Sonia had a miscarriage. The baby was a girl, and they never had the chance to name her. It was something they had never shared with Colton. So, how did he know? No one had an answer. Neither his mother nor his father could speak. Colton said his sister in heaven had long hair, often played with other children, and most of all, she loved to give hugs. She ran up to me and hugged me. She didn't say much. She just hugged me. For a long time, Sonia broke into tears, not out of fear, but because a part of her had just been healed. Colton also shared there was an old lady sitting on a stone bench, smiling at him quietly, but never speaking. When Todd later showed him a picture of his great-grandmother, a woman who had passed away long before Colton was born, Colton pointed immediately. "That's her. She's there. She's very kind." Each memory, each story, like puzzle pieces Colton had brought back from another world. No drama, no exaggeration, just a child recounting where he had been. And these things, no one taught him, no one told him. They could only be memories of the soul. When Colton had fully recovered, the Burpo family decided to write down the story, not to become famous, not to shock the world, simply because they wanted to share what had restored their faith. The book, titled Heaven is for Real, was released quietly, but it spread like wildfire across a dry field. Just a few weeks later, the story shook the entire United States, not because it was a miracle, but because it made people stop and ask, if heaven is real, have I been living true to my soul? Many readers broke into tears. A mother who lost her child in a car accident, an old man who had just buried his wife of 50 years, a child mourning his older brother in a hospital bed. They wrote letters to the Burpo family, thousands of them, saying this story gave them something they thought was lost forever, hope. But of course, there were those who didn't believe. Critics spoke out. Some scientists claimed it was a hallucination caused by anesthesia, or the brain's response to oxygen deprivation during surgery. They said, it's just imagination, unverifiable, no scientific evidence. And in a way, they weren't wrong, because how do you prove a journey outside the body? How do you hold a piece of heaven in your hand? Todd Burpo understood that. He didn't argue. He simply said, I didn't write this book to make you believe. I just wrote what my son said. And how it changed our entire family. To Todd, Colton didn't just return with a story. He brought back faith. Not blind faith, but faith wrapped in the responsibility to live true, live real life with gratitude. Colton's story split the world in two. One half began asking questions. The other found answers deep within their own hearts. Because sometimes The things that move us most don't need proof. They just need to feel true to the deepest part of you. If you believe that heaven is real, would you still see death as the end? If you knew that, on the other side, there was a place waiting for you filled with light, with love, with the people you've lost, how would you choose to live today? Colton wasn't a prophet. He was just a 4-year-old boy. He didn't preach. He didn't try to convince anyone to believe. He simply shared, as if he had just stepped through a door that adults had long forgotten. And then, that door opened something deeper. If heaven is real, then what truly matters in this life? Maybe it's not money, not fame, not how many followers you have, or how many degrees or achievements you've collected. Maybe it's the love you give without expecting anything in return. It's the quiet moments you sit beside someone who's hurting. It's the hug you give your mother. It's the voice you choose to use to say I'm sorry. It's the grateful eyes you open each morning just because you're still breathing. If a child came back from heaven with eyes more peaceful than most adults, then maybe we should pause, truly pause, and ask ourselves one very simple question. Am I living as if this life will last forever? Or as if my soul has a home to return to? Colton Burpo once said something very quietly. In the end, the greatest thing Colton brought back wasn't proof. It was a reminder that the most important things we've known since we were children. We just forgot them on the way to growing up. So, if heaven is real as Colton saw it, then let's live in a way that each day becomes a step closer to that light. Not perfectly, just honestly and kindly. If you're still listening by now, maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you've stared at the ceiling on a quiet night, whispering a question no one ever answered. Are they still there? I can't give you a photograph of heaven. There's no video, no absolute proof. But there is one thing I can offer you. Sometimes, faith doesn't come from evidence. It comes from a feeling that logic cannot explain. Colton's story isn't here to force you to believe. It's here to remind you that if a small child could return from the light and speak of it with peaceful eyes, without fear, then maybe life doesn't end when the heart stops beating. It just changes form, shifts scenes, and continues somewhere else. And if you're living through a winter of the soul, if you feel like you're falling through a silent night with no answer, then let this story hold you for a moment. Just a moment to remind you you're not alone. That maybe someone you loved is still watching over you. That the light is still there. Even if you can't see it today, heaven may feel far away, but love never is. Thank you for walking this journey with me. This is Heaven's Thread, where every story is a thread, connecting the seen with the unseen, the hearts still beating, with the souls never truly lost. If this story touched you, leave the letter Q in the comments, so I know something deeper than words reached you. And if you'd like me to tell more stories, more tender, more real, just leave the letter E, and I'll listen and grow. In the next video, I'll share a heartbreaking story about a mother who lost her child in her sleep, and the strange dream that helped her forgive herself. If you want to hear it, just comment. Next. I'll see you again on the other side of another story, where the light is always waiting